Good afternoon. Welcome to this day, October the 2nd, I believe it is, day of opportunities, possibilities, miracles, and choices. I greet you this day with the greetings of respect and welcome you to this time into our mindful community. How has your last week been for you? Did you enjoy your week? Did things go well for you? Thank all of you, as always, for sharing the messages, sharing the videos, watching them again and again. Did you have some conversations about that? We talked about the woods are lovely, dark and deep, that piece, promises to keep. We talked about that sense of commitment. Did you talk with anybody? Share your story when you can, if there were some stories that were meaningful to you, that were helpful. If you were able to use the strategy of relaxing and breathing, breathe out, breathe in, I am this, and breathing out, I am not that. If you had some experiences with that went well, please share that, because somebody in our listening and viewing audience will appreciate and get some value from that piece. So as always, I hope that you did. Today, let's begin as we always do with relaxing and breathing. Welcome back, older listeners, and welcome for the first time, newer listeners. So we just want to simply take a moment and relax and breathe. Last week in my one of my sessions at a facility, one of the nursing supervisors suggested something when I was saying, okay, you can't give what you don't have. So if you had to teach somebody how to relax and breathe, what method would you do? How would you help them do it in a crisis right there? Here's what she suggested. I want to give it to you. She said, smell the roses, blow out the candle. Smell the roses, blow out the candle. Just that simple act. Smell the roses, blow out the candle. Just that simple act might be major in being able to help not only you, but help someone else be able to relax during a difficult or a challenging time. I want to add to that the last of the limitations that I want to give you. Remember last week, and I did it for the last 3 weeks, giving yourself permission to be human. So last time I talked about recognizing and accepting that you can't fix everything. This time I want to remind you that you can't add more time to your day. And the awareness of that might be helpful in you being able to relax and breathe a little bit better. Just that realization that you can't add more time. So you're trying to squeeze things in and you still have people say, man, I can't believe the day is gone already. It's the same 24 hours, 1,440 minutes that it has always been. You can't add more time. As a matter of fact, it's a miseducation and an illusion that you can even manage time, because you can't at all, ever. You can only manage what you do with your time. At a certain point, it's going to be 1 o'clock Central Time. No matter how I manage things, still going to be 1 o'clock here at a certain point. So how do you manage that time? Understanding and empowering yourself to know that might help you. Okay, this is the time I've got. So if I were to ask you, how much time do you have left? The answer is not on your watch or on the clock on the wall or on your phone or computer. The answer is you don't know how much time you have left, or I have left, in this park of life. What we do know is you have just enough time. And that might help you relax a little better. You have just enough time to say thank you. You have just enough time to say I'm sorry. Just enough time to say I love you. Just enough time to apologize. To say I appreciate that. To say excuse me. To tell someone it's okay. You have just enough time to do those small things. Just enough time to smile at someone who may be walking by. Just enough time to speak. So there are millions of things that you have just enough time to do, though we don't know where our cutoff is going to be. Knowing that whatever's going on, you've got just enough time to do some critical things, might help you to smell the roses and blow out the candle. Hopefully. Put that in your toolbox. Use it if you need it. If you don't use it, at least it's there. Maybe somebody you know in your circle might be able to benefit from that. Brings us now into our mindful moment content. This moment was inspired by the military strategist Sun Tzu. And as you know, those of you who know his writings, he has many that have been included in The Art of War. I'm going to share one of them with you, and we'll mindfully look at it. Because the intention of all of his writings was to increase victories and minimize defeats with minimal loss. It was a military strategy. He was a Chinese general. That's what his strategies were built for, being successful in military encounters. But others have been able to use it in corporations, in business, in relationship, because the principles are so solid and strong. Here's one of them. It is said that one who knows the enemy and knows himself will not be endangered in 100 engagements. One who knows only the enemy and not himself will sometimes be victorious and sometimes meet with defeat. But the one who knows neither his enemy or himself will invariably be defeated in every engagement. That's the quote of his. So there's at least 5 touch points that we can use to examine mindfully to help us figure out where things are. He talks about knowing yourself. He talks about knowing the enemy, talks about engagements, talks about being victorious and being defeated. Let's deal with the one of knowing yourself. He says you got to know yourself if you're going to be successful. How well do you know you? How much time have you spent trying to understand who you are? What are your strengths, really? And I'm going to say, I'm going to add this to Sun Tzu's writing that was already very complete, the now what. So you heard me say many times that knowledge is not power. So it doesn't matter how much you know something. The thing is, once you know, now what? So add that into everything we're saying. So do you know your strengths that you have? What areas are you strong in? What areas are you not strong in? What areas do you have weakness in that you may need to strengthen? What do you know about yourself in terms of your habits, in terms of your attitude, in terms of your behavior, in terms of the way you manage conflict, in terms of the way you handle decisions, in terms of the way you handle things concerning the time that you have in a day? How well do you know you? Your patterns of behavior that have produced the health situation that you have at this point, the relationships you have, the finances that you have. How well do you know you in terms of your view of success? What is meaningful as far as success or winning, of being good, having good finances? How well do you know yourself? Have you taken time to examine that? And if there's areas where there could be some improvement, now what? So you look at yourself and you say, well, no, I'm not that strong in this area. Now what? What are you going to do with that? Knowing yourself and then knowing what you can do next so that your next move is your best move and that you can be victorious and not be defeated. Are you willing to take that time to sit with you? Or are you one of those say, I don't have time to, I've never really thought about me or where I am or what my values are? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What moral standards do you have? Or do you just drift as things go by and allow the world and outside stuff to dictate who are you? Who are you? That's part number one. And what are you willing to do about your assessment of who you are? Are you willing to even hear other people, how other people see you? Is that important to you? Next, he talked about the enemy. You got to know the enemy. It's probably easy for you to recognize the enemy who comes at you with the intention of, as the dictionary describes an enemy as someone seeking to do injury or harm, physically or psychologically, someone who is looking to overthrow, or someone who is looking to confound its opponents. So you know someone who's coming at you with a gun or a knife or some kind of weapon, and they're overtly and aggressively trying to do physical harm to you. You can recognize that. You may even know what to do. You know, they have classes that teach you to run, hide, fight. Maybe you know what to do. But what about when the enemy disguises himself or herself and they don't show all of that in the beginning? Are you able to recognize an enemy when you see him coming? Are you able to recognize that, or are you fooled and confounded because they say one thing and do something else? There's many quotes out there. There's one quote that says, "I judge my friends by those who are willing to help me to eliminate my enemies." But who is that enemy? That person who comes to you, have you been confused by having them say one thing and do something else? Well, they're treating me like an enemy. They say things that insult me. They say things that are disrespectful. They don't treat me like they care for me, but they say that they do. The actions is a true indicator of what a person actually feels and thinks. They may say one thing, but what do their actions dictate to you? So if you recognize that there is an enemy to your wellness, to your physical health, or to your mental health, and you know that, now what? What are you prepared to do if it happens to be someone close to you? But how could this be an enemy? This is my wife, my husband, my sister, my brother, my mother, my father. How could that person be an enemy? Assess the actions. Assess what it is they're doing, and how do you feel at the end of that? Are you able to recognize those people or even those places that you may choose to go to that you know at the end of it, you just don't feel good? You feel less than who you should be after you have attended or if you've gone to these places. Are there things even that are enemies to your wellness that you are involved in, that you know is not good for your forward movement? On a weekly basis, on a weekend basis, are you doing things that's an enemy to your overall physical and mental wellness and forward movement? Are you able to recognize those people, places, and things? And if you are, and you know the enemy, now what? I watch these survival episodes a lot. Dual survival, naked and afraid, single survival. And it's always critical for them to do well. They have to know what their skill sets are, knowing themselves, and they have to also know what the enemies of their wellness is. So they do that by assessing the plants. And when they bring in something or eat something that has not been for their good, they suffer the consequences of that later. Physically, in many cases, and have to be extracted from that environment. What about you? Do you know the enemy, and are you still bringing in and taking in ideas and messages from people who don't have your best interests in mind? They're seeking to confound you. They have become the wolf in sheep's clothing. Third touch point, he said engagements. So what might those be? Engagements be? That will be anywhere that's along your journey. So that engagement might come in your job, in your journey through this life, as an employer or as employees, or in relationships that you get involved in, or when a conflict or something comes up. How do you manage those engagements? So that's what you might come in contact with, where you might be needing to know who you are and who the enemy is in that relationship, in that job that you're at, so that you don't look up months, weeks, years later and you find that you are less than you were when you went into it. Next touch point, what does it mean to be victorious? It means to win in spite of. It means to stay strong psychologically and spiritually in spite of. That's what winning is. He's not talking about winning little battles. He's talking about ultimately winning the war. Are you able to be victorious and maintain a sense of strength and power no matter what has happened to you? Victorious. The same thing is true on the other side with defeat. And I'm talking about being victorious, maintaining honor and dignity. Because there's some people who win at all costs. And at the end of it, the loss has been tremendous. They've lost their health. They won in terms of their finances. They got more finances, but they weren't victorious because they lost their health in the process. Or they lost valuable relationships in the process. The loss was great. That's not true victory. We're talking about victory with minimal losses and great accomplishment, maintaining honor and dignity after you have acquired the thing that was important for you to acquire. defeat. Defeat is when you lose your spirit and your will to thrive, no matter what's going on. So let me give you a couple of real examples. There are some people who have dealt with the enemy of illness, like cancer and such. And in spite of that illness, their spirit remained victorious and powerful to their last dying breath. Yes, their body was deteriorating. Their body was being taken away, but they kept a strong spirit. They remained victorious in spite of everything that was going on. There are some people who feel defeated just because they can't get their nails done, right? Or they've gained a couple of pounds. They can't even leave the house. They become devastated and defeated because something external has happened. We're talking about people who can maintain a strong psychological spirit in spite of outside and external circumstances. In spite of the fact that things didn't go well in every encounter that you tried, but you kept your honor, you kept your dignity, and you kept your spirit strong, not being defeated by outside circumstances. Can you do that? Sun Tzu says, to know yourself, who you are, taking the time, then knowing what to do. To know the enemy, understanding that enemy even when they're in sheep's clothing. How about in your circle? Identifying that enemy, and then what are you going to do about it? Understanding the engagement as we journey through this journey of life. Understanding everybody that you come in contact with is an encounter and an opportunity for an engagement. How do you manage that? Understanding what true victory is. Maintaining a strong positive spirit with honor and dignity regardless of external circumstances. Not being defeated when things come at you or when you lose certain abilities. And I've talked to people and worked with people who have lost literally arms and legs. There's a guy I know who's working a regular job. No arms, no legs. Has a family, still going. Spirit stronger than people with all their limbs and abilities. Not defeated by external losses because his spirit stayed strong and victorious. That's what being a true warrior is all about. That being the case, that being said, the message from Sun Tzu, I encourage you this next week to look for an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and decide what are you going to do about it. Take the time to be still to assess, where are you? I encourage you to look for an opportunity to assess the people and places in your life that may be an enemy to your forward movement. Look for an opportunity to be victorious and not be overwhelmed by a situation that may be going on at your job, in your health, the health of your family or circumstances. Look for an opportunity to be victorious and to not be defeated so you can continue. Next, I encourage you to consider the possibility of what it would be like if you are able to handle, as in Rudyard Kipling's piece, handle victory and defeat and deal with both imposters equally well. Consider the possibility of what your life would be like in your journey if you're not afraid. You're not afraid of things working out, and you're not afraid of defeat because you know your true victory is in your spirit of power and your awareness of who you are and where you're ultimately going. Last, expect and experience the miracles that will expand in your life as you become more conscious. You open your third eye of awareness and you become mindful of your moments and you're able to notice what you notice of things around you. I thank you as always for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. Would you consider sharing this video with someone? Would you consider sharing the message with someone? Please do. Give me the feedback. Post the feedback, the comments, because believe me, it's your comments that just might help somebody else that will never tell me that they're watching, but they may hear something or see something you say that just might help them make it through a little bit better. I encourage you to do that. And again, I thank all of you for being a part of this. Next week, we'll continue with something very powerful and moving in our next mindful moment. Remember this time to smell the rose and blow out the candle. Thank you for joining. Until next time, I wish you to travel well with respect.